Hey everyone, welcome! Today we're going to crack open the Creator's Toolkit and talk about something that's incredibly valuable but, often kind of misunderstood: intellectual property. So let me ask you something right off the bat. Just for a second, think about your business, your latest project, maybe even your own personal brand. What do you think is your most valuable asset? Is it the building? The computers? Well, what if I told you it's probably something you can't even hold in your hands? Yeah, we're talking about your ideas, your brand, your secret sauce, all those intangible things that really make you, you. So in this explainer, we're going to break down this pretty complex world into 5 clear, totally manageable parts. Think of it like our IP toolkit. First, we'll cover the 4 pillars of IP. Then we'll see how you get from a simple idea to a real asset. We'll talk about managing your portfolio, putting your IP to work, and finally, defending your territory. So let's jump in. Okay, first up, the 4 pillars of IP. You can think of these as the absolute essential tools in your creative workshop. You've got to know what they are before you can really start protecting your work properly. And this chart right here, it basically maps out the whole IP landscape. You've got patents for inventions and processes. Then you've got trademarks. That's all about your brand identity, names and logos. Copyrights are for all the creative stuff: music, books, even software code. And last but not least, trade secrets. This is your confidential info, the classic example being the Coca-Cola formula. Each one does a different job, and a really solid strategy usually mixes and matches them. Okay, so you've got an idea, and it fits into one of those boxes. That's fantastic. But now what? How do you actually go from just having an idea to owning an asset? Let's break down how you turn that little spark of genius into something that's legally protected. Now, I know it might sound super complicated, but there's a pretty clear path for this. It's often called the invention disclosure process. It all starts with conception. That just means writing your idea down in detail. Then you formally disclose it so it can be reviewed. After that, some experts will assess it to see if it's new, if it has potential, and finally, you make a decision on the best way to protect it, like, say, filing a patent. See, it's a structured path, not some random maze you have to figure out on your own. But hold on, even before you get to that formal process, you've got to lay some groundwork. This means using things like confidentiality agreements, or NDAs, to create what's basically a cone of silence when you're talking about your ideas. And if you have a team, employee IP agreements are absolutely crucial to make sure that anything created on the clock legally belongs to the company. Seriously, this is your foundation. Don't skip it. So once you have these assets, you can't just stick them in a drawer and forget about them. Nope, you have to manage them, just like you would any other valuable property. This is where we get into organizing and maintaining your collection, or your portfolio. And that brings us to this really important concept: intellectual property governance. This isn't just about filing paperwork. It's the big picture strategy. It's the whole framework for managing your intellectual assets to make sure they're actually helping you hit your business goals. And that collection of assets, your portfolio, might look something like this. So for this hypothetical company, patents are the biggest piece of the pie, but you can see trademarks and copyrights are also super important. The thing is, the right mix is going to look totally different for every single organization. It all depends on what you do and what you're trying to achieve. And managing this portfolio, it's an ongoing job. It means doing regular IP audits just to know what you have, paying those maintenance fees to keep your patents alive, doing due diligence when you're thinking about big deals like mergers, and using data to make smarter strategic moves. It's all about actively taking care of your assets. All right, so you've identified your IP, you've protected it, you've organized it. Now comes the really fun part: putting your IP to work. This is where we stop just protecting stuff and start using it to create real, tangible value. This quote from Mark Getty just nails it. Intellectual property is the oil of the 21st century. And it's so true. In today's economy, these intangible assets are literally the fuel for innovation and for growth. So one of the most common ways to make money from your IP is through licensing agreements, and they usually come in 2 main flavors. You have an exclusive license, which gives the rights to just one partner. That's great for a really deep partnership and can mean higher revenue. On the other hand, a non-exclusive license lets you partner with lots of companies at once, which is perfect if you want to get your product out there to a much wider market. It's a huge strategic choice. But licensing isn't the only game in town, not at all.
You can use technology transfer agreements to get amazing inventions out of a research lab and into the real world. You can structure how IP is owned when you're creating with partners. And you can even get a formal IP valuation to find out the exact financial worth of everything you've created. All right, we're in the home stretch now. You've created all this value, but now you have to defend it. Welcome to our final section, defending your territory. Because let's be real, protecting what you've built is just as important as building it in the first place. And the best defense is a proactive one. Think of these as your early warning systems. A freedom to operate analysis, for example, make sure your cool new product isn't accidentally stepping on someone else's toes. And actively monitoring what your competitors are up to, while also watching for any misuse of your trademark, well, that helps you spot trouble long before it becomes a 5-alarm fire. But what happens when somebody does cross the line? Well, that's when you pull out your reactive tools. IP litigation is the official legal process to enforce your rights and shut down infringement. And brand protection means getting out there and actively fighting against fakes and knockoffs to protect your reputation and, of course, your revenue. We've covered a ton of ground here, right? We've gone through the entire toolkit, from the basic pillars all the way to active defense. So when you put it all together, what's the big picture? The crucial point is that managing your intellectual property is a full life cycle. You have to identify your pillars, you gotta know what you're working with. Then you formalize your assets by following a clear process. You have to manage them actively with a real strategy. And finally, you have to be ready to both leverage and defend them, to create that value and then protect it. And that really brings us to the final thought. Every single creator, every entrepreneur, every company has valuable ideas. So the question I really want to leave you with is this. Your ideas have value. Are you protecting them?